I'm Sherry Sturman, Director of Crayola Education. We're excited that Workman Publishing is collaborating with Crayola on this Creative Spa for Teacher session. This special program is for everyone who educates children, whether at school or at home, to help you rejuvenate, refresh, and rekindle your creative energy. While you enjoy today's creative ideas, you'll also get great tips on how children use Sketchnotes to express and self-regulate their feelings as we head into a new school year. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Alyse Ruriani. Alyse is a registered art therapist, licensed professional counselor, graphic designer, and holds a master's in art therapy and counseling. Alyse is the author and illustrator of the Big Feelings Survival Guide. Alyse, we are delighted to have you join us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Alyse, please start by telling us about your background and what inspired you to write a creative workbook for mental health.
Yeah, so my background is in art therapy and counseling. So I went to graduate school to study both art therapy and counseling and got my licensed professional counselor license in Illinois, and I'm a registered art therapist. So that's my educational background, and I work as an art therapist and counselor at a group practice in Chicago. But what really inspired me to make this book is my own personal experiences with mental health. So when I was an adolescent, I received art therapy and was also in, regular talk therapy, and was in a therapy called dialectical behavior therapy. And I found that art therapy and DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, were both really beneficial to me and my own healing and getting to find ways to regulate my emotions and also express them. And so I wanted to find something that kind of combined those two. That was some sort of creative workbook that I could be doing at home in between my therapy sessions and kind of being able to do some work on my own time. But I really had a hard time finding a book that was both. I could find ones that were just creative and art-based, but weren't really based in any sort of therapy or self-help. Or I could find ones that were really clinical, but as like a 15-year-old, I was not really interested in these really text-heavy books, especially, coming home from school and things. And so I would look in the bookstore and couldn't really find anything. And I kind of just put that idea in the back of my head that, well, maybe one day I'll, make one. I knew I wanted to go into being an art therapist. And as, years went on and I started school and everything, I just kind of held on to that idea and decided that I really wanted to actually make it happen.
Please explain a little bit more about those two therapy types and how sketchnoting connects those two types of therapy together that you really base this book's exercises on.
So dialectical behavior therapy is a therapy that really centers on this idea of acceptance and change. And, if you think about the term dialectical, it's really about how two opposite things can both be true. So we can both accept where we're at and how we are and want to change things about where we're at and how we are. And so dialectical behavior therapy has different modules within it that kind of target different areas of life. So there's distress tolerance, which is getting through those more crisis moments. There's emotional regulation, about how do we regulate our emotions, mindfulness, being present in our day-to-day, and interpersonal effectiveness. So how do we communicate with other people and build our skills around that? So DBT has a lot of skills within each of those modules that help us just find ways to address those different topics. Sketchnoting, I think, when thinking about my art therapy education and learning about how important creativity is and visual arts and being able to use our hands for things, I thought about how I could use that sketchnoting to help people learn DBT skills in a different way that is not just reading words on a page, but is actually more experiential, is actually using our creative brain to explore those skills more.
I love the balance that you just described, accepting yourself and being eager to change yourself. That's really beautiful. Alyse, please tell us about base emotions and other powerful feelings that grow out of them. How can sketchnoting help us to consider possible purposes for those feelings, especially why it's important to embrace confusion?
The base emotions that I kind of use in this book and look at as the ones that all of our other emotions come from are sadness, fear, on anger. And so, sadness, we can think about all the different types of words that we might use. Instead of just saying, I'm sad, we might say, I'm feeling really low. We might say, I'm feeling kind of numb. There's all these different words we might use, but they can be kind of rooted in sadness. And same with fear. That can be where anxiety comes from. If we might be feeling scared, nervous, these different things that can come from that base of fear. And anger, we might feel irritable. We might feel really frustrated. There's so many different words we can use. And I think words can be really wonderful, but I think where the sketchnoting can come in and how important that can be is helping us kind of find more of the purpose of those feelings and ways to express them. And so it can be easy to really dislike big feelings because they don't always feel super great in our body and they're not necessarily enjoyable, but it can be helpful to recognize what they do for us and why we have them is so that we can appreciate them and kind of work with them. And so seeing anger as something that motivates us for change. It tells us, something might be unjust, something is not fair, and alerts us to that. Sadness can alert us to things that we might need to release, that we might need to give ourselves some space to grieve. And fear alerts us to there might be danger. There might be something that's not feeling right or something that's not feeling comfortable. And the more that we can get to know these emotions, and that's where I think the sketchnoting and using creativity to help us express them, it might help us to figure out where they are in our body. We can use color, we can use lines, we can use symbols to help us get to know these emotions. And that can help us to regulate them, to express them, and to really see them for what they are, which is something that helps us navigate life.
Alyse, I love how your book suggests that we communicate anger. First, by getting it all out, sketching with a sense of urgency, and releasing those unfiltered thoughts, and then translating that communication into a more refined expression of facts so that the situation, so that we prepare ourselves to engage in productive conversation. Many of our viewers are educators and parents, so please explain how this technique is helpful both for adults and children. And how does visualizing anger help us with both the filtered and those unfiltered communications?
Anger is an emotion that is really strong and it's really urgent. And I think that term of the urgency is what I think about a lot of. We're feeling this anger, we feel this urgent need to yell at someone, or we don't know what to do with our body, and we might have these impulses that we know are not going to be effective or helpful or maybe even be harmful. And so I think we can think of anger as harmful, but anger, the emotion, is not a bad emotion. It's that a lot of us might not have the skills of how do we deal with it? What do we do with it when we're feeling this really intense feeling? And so a lot of times, like I said earlier, like anger can be signifying to us that something's not right. Something hurt our feelings, something maybe feels unfair. And so there might be situations where we need to address that with someone. And so it can be helpful to use sketchnoting to get that really sense of urgency out, whether it's journaling out what it is you want to say, but you're not actually going to say those things because they might be hurtful and not actually how you're feeling, but is more motivated by that intense anger. And so getting to sketchnote out those feelings, you can use color, scribbling. We think about how getting that energy out of our body. And so even if it's taking a red crayon and scribbling all over a big piece of paper, getting that energy out can help us to calm our body and getting out those words and things so that then we can look at it later and be like, okay, what can I pull from this angry letter that I wrote? I'm not going to actually send this to the person, but maybe I can highlight what are the things in here that actually get to the message that I need to communicate, and then using skills to communicate that, we're more likely to be heard and we're more likely to have that productive conversation.
I love that goal, so that we're more likely to be heard. That's really what communicating with someone else is about. Thank you. I'm excited that Alyse is going to demonstrate 2 exercises from the Big Feeling Survival Guide. The first is called Self-Soothe. Alyse, I love your guidance around strong, uncomfortable emotions and that we use our senses to help soothe ourselves. Please describe how this works as you sketch with each sense in mind.
Self-soothe, like you said, is using our senses to help regulate our bodies. So we have different little icons here to represent different senses. So we have sight, hearing, smell, feeling, and touch, and taste. And so with this thread, we can think about activities or things that can help with each of these senses. So with sight, I might think about a TV show that I can watch that I really like, and that's engaging that sense. I might think about, I like flowers. Maybe I go to my friend's garden, go look at all the pretty plants and flowers and getting that sensory input. And something to think about too is that a lot of things use multiple senses. So for example, we might see flowers, thinking about all the different things that they engage. So you're looking at them and that's pretty, but you also can smell them. So maybe I put that over here as well. Same with something like TV. I might put a little thing here too, because I might be listening to it. Maybe I think about music that I like, and that would be a way to engage in hearing. Feeling and touch, we can think about, I have a cat, so I might think, okay, maybe I can spend some time with my cat Boo and pet him. Put his name in there too. You can be specific. I might lay down on my bed and feel the coldness of my pillow and the soft touch of that. I can think about if there's certain smells that I really like. Maybe I think of a cup of coffee and the sensory input you get from that. That could also be something that you put in taste. I think I'll put for taste maybe a chocolate bar, and engage in your senses that way and sort of mindfully eat something that brings you some joy. See, I also maybe put a little stick figure person, and I'll think about like seeing my friends and spending time with people that I love. Maybe I also put something about making art in sight, because that's something that brings me a lot of joy and engages that sense. So you're really just thinking about these different things that when you're feeling really big emotions and we need to regulate our body, a really great way that we have access to is using our senses. And so that can be just taking a minute, thinking about the different things around you that you could use. It can mean thinking about what you're currently doing. And maybe I'm sitting here and I'm thinking like, okay, can I smell anything right now? What do I see right now? That can be a really good way to ground ourselves in the current moment, as well as things that we can take time out of our day to do to intentionally engage with these senses. So that's just some of these ideas. You can think about different things, and you can always come back and add more as you think about more things that might be helpful in engaging those senses.
Beautiful. I love how practical and the great examples that you provided. For our next art demo, we call it Seed Packet Portraits. Alyse, your book reminds us that imagination is a powerful tool and helps us understand ourselves. I love the activity in your book, which we start to think of ourselves as a creative plant metaphor. And that helps us identify our strengths and visualize what we need to flourish. Please show us how this works.
So this is one of my favorite art-based things to do with clients, and also I like doing it on my own and with friends, because I think it's a nice metaphor for growth and thinking about what we need, thinking about things that nourish us. So we can think of ourselves as a plant. And so it can be a plant that currently exists. It can be something just from your own imagination. I'm not going to think about it too much. Some people really like to plan out, but sometimes I think just kind of going with your intuition and going with whatever comes to mind as things that might represent you, or icons or imagery that you want to include. And so you can be making things up. Like, you don't have to have a specific plant in mind. I'm just sort of going on what's appealing to me today to think about a way to represent myself. When I'm thinking about this, there's both this visual aspect, but the other part here, the tips, is thinking about just as a plant needs things like water, it needs light, needs soil, we all have our own needs as well, and thinking about what might those things be that we need. And so in this instruction area, it has things that we might require and things that we might nourish ourselves with. And so I know that for me, being in water is really nourishing for me. And so just as a regular plant needs water, I'm going to put water on mine because that's something that is really calming to me. I also need connection. So thinking about the people in my life that bring me a lot of joy and how helpful that is to me. When I think about requires, maybe I'll put connection in here too. It can be both nourishing to me and also it's something that I need. I might put something like laughter is really important to me. And so I'm just thinking about the different things that are meaningful to me. I'm going to put validation. That's something that it can be really important in our lives of feeling like we are seen and heard. Maybe I'll put seen and heard. But those are things that I require. And so you can name your plant. I think I'm just going to put my name because I think that is what this plant is going to be called today. And so just thinking about the way you want to visually represent yourself and then thinking about these things that help you to grow and help you to meet your needs. And knowing these things can be helpful not only for ourselves to meet our needs, but also it helps give other people, we can communicate to them what we might be needing and how other people in our lives can also help us grow.
What a great metaphor to think about what kind of plant we really are. Well, our viewers are finishing their self-soothe or their seed packet portraits. I'd like to remind everyone that it's easy to stay updated on future Create a Spa sessions and many other free Crayola colorful learning programs. Just sign up for our Crayola Education Ease newsletter, check off the box for education, and every month you'll receive idea seedlings that will grow into your self-care activities. Alyse, you have shared great insights about feelings while introducing our viewers to the power of Sketchnotes. How can our viewers follow you online so we can keep learning from you?
I have an Instagram page that is just my first and last name at Alyse Ruriani, and I post different illustrations there that might be some affirmations, might be some infographics about mental health. So I post a lot of different things on there. And I also have a website, author-illustrator.com, where you can learn a bit more about my work and you can get the Big Feeling Survival Guide wherever books are sold.
Alyse, what last bit of advice or closing tips do you have for our viewers as they use sketchnoting to help them understand their big feelings and preparing themselves for a successful new school year?
I think my advice would be that anyone can use creativity. Anyone can do sketchnoting. Anyone can use our creativity. We all have that innate creativity, and sometimes it's just giving ourselves the chance to express it. So definitely have some materials on hand and try and make some time during your week, even if it's for a couple minutes, to sketchnote and to get to express yourself a little bit creatively.
Great advice. We all are creative and just give ourselves the time to try it out. We want to thank Alyse Ruriani for inspiring us today. And we want to thank Workman Publishing for bringing their book to all of us. And a special thanks to everyone who joined us for this session. Stay well as you sketch your big feelings.
Bye. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you enjoy.
Bye-bye.